Well, a priest and a pastor are standing by the side of the road holding up a sign that reads, "The end is near. Turn around now before it's too late." A car passes by and the driver shouts, "Leave us alone, you religious nuts," and continues to speed ahead. Soon they hear screeching tires and a big splash. The priest says to the pastor, "Do you think we should change the sign to bridge out instead?" Well, this morning I am sounding the alarm. The end is near. The signs of the time, as the song said, are everywhere. And it's not because the bridge is out. It's because the signs point to Jesus' soon return. Well, that's the title of my message this morning, Signs of Jesus' Soon Return. And this morning we're going to be looking at a new axis of evil. Today's sermon is the 8th in a series that we started way back in August. And I've been doing this a little differently. Rather than preaching each of these sermons consecutively week after week, I've just been kind of dropping these in randomly about every 4 to 6 weeks. And again, today we are focusing on a new axis of evil that is in Ezekiel's prophecy. In his 2002 State of the Union address, President Bush used that phrase for the first time, that phrase, axis of evil. On his list were the nations of Iran, Iraq, North Korea, and Cuba. He referred to them as an axis of evil. He said, and I quote, "These regimes pose a grave threat and growing danger." Well, President Bush was roundly criticized for calling these rogue nations evil, but his description was accurate. One of the nations on President Bush's axis of evil list is of special interest to us when it comes to our discussion of the end of times, because that nation is also on God's list. That nation and that list are found in Ezekiel 38 and 39, chapters 38 and 39. And again, this is one of the most dramatic and one of the most important prophecies in all of Scripture, given by Ezekiel, think about it, some 2,600 years ago. It speaks of things that are aligning in the world today, never before witnessed in history. This prophecy, commonly referred to as the prophecy of Gog and Magog, is the most detailed prophecy concerning war found in the Bible. This prophecy predicts a last days invasion of Israel from every direction by a huge coalition of nations led by Russia and Iran. Earlier this year, this ought to give you chicken skin, honestly. Earlier this year, for the first time in history, Russia and Iran, these two unlikely partners, entered into a formal relationship. It happened on Friday, January 17th, and again, that was just this year, 2025. Russia and Iran signed a treaty aligning their governments in cooperative endeavors. Never before in history has there been such cooperation of these two governments. This could be related to Ezekiel's prophecy. This may have been one of the most significant developments in recent history related to prophecy, and it was largely unnoticed, largely because Trump was dominating the news cycle back in January. The beginning stages of Ezekiel's prophecy could be taking place right before our eyes, right in our own generation. And very few people are aware of the amazing significance of this. Well, the prophecy of Gog and Magog begins with this list of proper names, the proper names of nations. These nations, most of which no longer go by their original names, form a coalition that will march against Israel. This morning we're going to look at that list, and it begins with Gog. Now, this is the first of the names found on this list. Gog is found 11 times in Ezekiel 38 and 39. While it is listed among the nations, it is not the name of a nation, but the title of a ruler. It means ruler. Gog apparently is an individual because God addresses him as such several times. Gog is also called a prince. Well, Magog is the next proper name that appears on this list. Magog today is made up of the nations that were formerly part of the Soviet Union. Dr. Wilbur Smith, writing about Magog, says, "One thing is certain. All these names, as understood 2,500 years ago, refer to territory either now included within the boundaries of or immediately adjacent to Russia." Well, the next name is Rosh. The name Rosh is found in the Old Testament over 600 times. During Ezekiel's time, the people of Rosh included those living north of the Black Sea. In the prophecies of Ezekiel 38 and 39, we are told 3 times that part of the invading force will come from the far north or the remotest parts of the north. The land that is most distantly north and remote to Israel is Russia. The next name or names included on that list are Meshech and Tubal. The most probable identification of Meshech and Tubal is Turkey. Next comes Persia. This name is found 35 times in the Old Testament. In March 1935, the ancient land of Persia became known as the nation of Iran. Today, Iran has become a hotbed of militant Islam and anti-Semitic hatred. Iran's leaders have in recent years stated openly and unashamedly that, and I quote, "Israel must be wiped off the map." And they are also on record as saying that with the help of Allah, there will soon be a world without Zionism. Well, Cush and Ethiopia are also names that appear on that list. Cush is first mentioned in Genesis chapter 10, verse 6. The Cushites themselves were established in Africa. Some translations of Cush are Ethiopia, but if this name is to be associated with Ethiopia, it must be noted that it is a territory much larger than modern Ethiopia. Well, Libya is on that list, as is and is referred to on the ancient map as Put. It is an Islamic nation, and like so many others, with a great hatred for Israel. Gomer, the present-day identification of Gomer is usually thought to be Turkey or Germany. Beth Togarmah. Secular historians usually identify this nation as Phrygia, a western kingdom in Asia Minor. This is what we currently call Turkey. So Ezekiel says that with all these nations, this new axis of evil, there are many more that will be part of this coalition. And when they come against Israel, there will be no possible human defense for the Israelis. In Ezekiel's prophecy in chapter 38, verse 13, the prophet suggests some nations that will not be involved in this invasion of Israel. Now, I don't have the time to identify all of these nations, but you may be surprised to learn that Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates is among them. When will this invasion occur? This invasion of Israel by Russia and Iran, excuse me, and this coalition of nations just identified will take place sometime in the future, what the Bible calls the latter days. It will happen at a time when Israel will be dwelling in peace and safety, and not involved in conflict with any other nations. Well, the only period of time that fits with this requirement is the time foretold immediately after the rapture of the church, when the Antichrist and the European Union make a treaty with Israel to guarantee her peace and security. Ezekiel also tells us of the purpose of this invasion, why these nations are coming against Israel. We are told this in verses 11 through 13 and verse 16 of Ezekiel 38. First, they are coming to seize Israel's land. Secondly, to steal Israel's wealth. And regarding that point, did you know that despite being a population of only 9 million people, Israel is now home to more than 180,000 millionaires and 41 billionaires, which is one of the highest per capita in the world. Thank you. I think I might just up. Thank you. You might also be surprised to know that Israel's GNP is almost double that of any other Middle Eastern country. So Russia and Iran and these other nations want that wealth. And the third reason is to slaughter Israel's people. The accumulated hatred for the Jews will drive these armies forward with the assurance that this time Israel will have no hope. So what happens? Well, God intervenes. The battle belongs to the Lord. When the Russian and Islamic armies come against Israel, it will appear to be the biggest mismatch in military history. That's pretty significant and awesome when you think about it. Jody and I just last night were watching a documentary on D-Day and the horrible slaughter of our soldiers in Normandy was tragic. This apparently will be much greater. The Israelis will be so outnumbered that there will be no human way for them to win this war. Only an intervention by God will save them. And that is exactly what happens. God steps in. And it will come to pass at the same time when God comes against the land of Israel, says the Lord God, that my fury will show in my face. God will save his people. And Ezekiel tells us how. God's going to do it in 4 simultaneous actions. The first of which will be the convulsions of the earth. Surely in that day there shall be a great earthquake in the land of Israel. And all the men who are on the face of the earth shall shake at my presence. The mountains shall be thrown down, the steep places shall fall, and every wall shall fall to the ground. The next way God is going to do this is by confusing the enemy troops. Every man's sword will be against his brother. And by the way, some of you Bible students may be aware that God has used this strategy before, at least once before. In Judges chapter 7 and chapter 8, we are told about Gideon coming against about 135,000 Midianites who gathered to come against Israel, 135,000, and they came against Gideon and his 300 men. And Gideon prevailed because God threw the enemy into total confusion. And God apparently is also going to save Israel once again in a similar fashion. And also by a contagion of disease. God will infect the invading troops with some debilitating disease that apparently will render them incapable of carrying out an effective attack. And then fourthly, by the calamities from the sky. God says through Ezekiel, I will rain down on him and on his troops and on the many peoples who are with him flooding rain, great hailstones, fire, and brimstone. So do you get the picture? God has an unfair advantage. He's God. And he controls nature. The prototype for this strategy was God's judgment upon Sodom and Gomorrah. As the author of the pulpit commentary says, every force of nature is a servant of the living God, and in a moment can be made a soldier armed to the teeth. God's forces stored in nature are mightier than the brawn of the human arm. Really, Ezekiel's, the details of his prophecy is amazing. He also tells us about the aftermath of the war. There will be so many casualties from this war that it will take 7 months to bury all the bodies and 7 years to destroy all the weapons. This is all part of what Ezekiel calls the cleansing of the land. Don't mess with God. And don't mess with God's people. Because he is the sovereign God of the universe. And throughout this entire series, we have been noticing that even in the most devastating of times, God is still in control. God is still on his throne, and God is still on his throne today. In fact, Ezekiel really leads us to believe that God is orchestrating these events. And there are several passages that allude to this. But let me be clear. The Bible never says that God instills evil in the hearts of men. But in the Old Testament, especially, it shows that God is the sovereign ruler over all. And when Ezekiel says that God will bring the enemy against the land, he is simply saying that God is bringing these nations to the doom their wickedness demands. In all of these predictions, all of these prophecies, there is one simple overriding purpose. I will bring you against my land so that the nations may know me. Thus I will magnify myself and sanctify myself, and I will be known in the eyes of many nations. Then they shall know that I am the Lord. Then they shall know that I am the Lord. So I will make my holy name known. Then the nations shall know that I am the Lord. I will set my glory among the nations. All the nations shall see my judgment, which I have executed. So God's purpose is really very simple. It's simply to bring glory to his name. He will show his own people, Israel, that he is their true God. And he will prove to the rest of the world that he is God. God's ultimate goal then is what it has always been, the salvation of people. So let me conclude with this final statement. Folks, we have read the back of the book. We have read the back of the book, and we win. We win. Be encouraged. we win.